Your loved one's care can be overwhelming, as I'm sure everyone in this room can attest to. Our panelist today consists of Taylor Davis, who's with Northwestern Mutual, Eric Shore, who's a partner, board-certified real estate planning and administration specialist from Sessions, Fishman, Nathan, and Israel, and Janine Sullivan, who's the owner of Senior Helpers in Lafayette. And they're here to talk to you about what to do when this disease comes into your life. It's overwhelming, there's decisions to be made. Should you be planning in advance for it? Because in our thought process, in our conversation earlier this week, our whole thought process was it's never too early to begin the planning. So I'm going to start with Janine, ask you to just introduce who you are, what Senior Helpers does, and we'll go from there.
Well, good morning. Is this
Yep.
So good morning. Test. Thank you. So good morning. My name is Janine Sullivan. About 7 years ago, I lost my aunt, who was 90 to Alzheimer's. Before that, I lost my other aunt to early onset, and my mother was diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment and is in her early stages of dementia. Can everybody understand me? I have spasmodic dysphonia, so it just kind of affects my talking. Anyway, so like probably every single one of you in here, I'm here because I am passionate about this disease. It affects every single one of us, whether we have a family member, a loved one, or a neighbor who has been affected by some sort of development with Alzheimer's or dementia. I worked for Senior Helpers in Lafayette. I went to Nashville and became a care manager and really focused on the care plans that we implemented for the families who had the disease and the caregivers who we taught and trained how to handle dementia with their caregivers and the patients. So when we take a look at dementia and Alzheimer's, we really want to make sure that we focus on what they can do. And so when Senior Helpers comes, we have a program called Senior Gems. An occupational therapist, Tipa Snow, has trained us, and we go out and train our caregivers. It is so important to be proactive in this disease. We have to prepare, and Taylor and Eric are going to tell you how we can prepare with that without just sitting down with the families ahead of time and making sure that we're honoring the wishes of the person who has dementia, to be prepared with estate planning, to know what's out there and what's available to help pay for in-home care or the assisted livings.
Thank you, Janine. My name is Taylor Davis. I'm a financial advisor to Northwestern Mutual, and my mother passed away in June of 2017. She had dementia and then worked into Alzheimer's for about a 5-year period. And we learned so much from that experience with my mother. I can't even begin to tell you. We don't have enough time in the day to do it, but we did do some planning for my mother, and it was incredibly important. As soon as we kind of figured that out, we quickly got what Eric's going to talk about, the powers of attorney, healthcare power of attorney. We got co-signatures on my mother's bank accounts. And I can't tell you, those documents help things go so smoothly when in a very stressful time. And so without those things that we did, it would have been even more stressful. My mother had the forethought to buy a long-term care policy, probably 20 years before she needed it. And when she bought that policy, the reason she bought it is because she didn't want to be she did not want to have be a financial strain on her kids. I'm one of 8 kids, and we would have all pitched in. But she bought that policy with that specific in mind, that she did not want to be a financial burden when she needed care. And so those things that she did created a lot less stress and a very stressful situation. I'm not going to tell you that creating the plan is going to make it, it is less stressful, but there's no magic pill for what the caregivers go through, as folks that have been through well know. So I encourage you, I had my handsome assistant, my nephew, he's dropping off some packets at your tables, and there's an important document in there called a Guide for the Future. And in that is everything you can put down for you and your loved one that they have, who their advisors are, where the wills are, where's the power of attorney. And I encourage everyone to do that in pencil, because things will change over time. And that could be the most important document as people progress through dementia and Alzheimer's and eventually through death that you could have. And I just encourage y'all to look at that document and fill it out for you and your kids as you move forward in your planning as you move forward. So I'm going to pass it to Eric Shore.
Hi, I'm Eric Shore, and I am a board-certified estate planning attorney, and I also have a master's degree in elder law. My firm, Sessions Fishman, specializes in estate planning on the high end, but we also specialize in Medicaid planning, elder law, long-term care planning. And what Janine and Taylor said is absolutely correct. Probably the most important thing you can do is to plan early. Everybody thinks this is never going to happen to me, and I'm never going to be in this situation. But 75% of seniors 65 and older are going to need some type of long-term care, and 50% are going to end up in a long-term care nursing facility. So what you want to do is take the onus off of your families, make the decisions that you need to make. You get things done ahead of time. At some point, somebody is going to be making decisions on your behalf, and what you want to do, what you need to do, is to make sure that the person who's making those decisions is the person you want to make those decisions for you.
So what I'd like to talk about is the initial meeting that we have with families, which probably every single one of you have sat down with your loved one, but it's been after the fact. You need to honor their wishes. What were your wishes before you contracted this disease? So when you turn around, like I'm 57 years old, I encourage all of our families to start making a decision now when you're cognitive enough to really make those decisions. What do you want to do? Do you want to go into a long-term care facility? Or do you want to stay at home? And then if you do choose to stay at home, what are those costs of staying at home versus being in a long-term care facility? Can anybody tell me in this room the average long-term care facility for someone in independent living? Can anybody tell me how much it costs, sir?
Between $5,000 and $10,000, $50,000 a year, or a month, I should say.
Okay, so you're talking about caregivers coming into your home. I'm talking about if I wanted to move into an independent living, something over, say, 65 years old, and I'm moving into around roughly $6,000. Okay,
$60,000 a year.
$6,000 a month.
Roughly.
$6,000 a month. Okay, so we're looking at $6,000 a month for independent living. Mostly it's about $3,500 as you move up. So what does independent living consist of? This is somebody who can work and do activities of daily living. They can dress, they can eat, they can do medication reminders. So when do you move into an independent to assisted? And all of a sudden, mom doesn't want to leave her independent living lifestyle and move into an assisted living. Well, the assisted living is there to help them with medication reminders, maybe helping with food prep, maybe helping with dressing and bathing because she's a high fall risk now because She can't remember to lift her feet, to walk. She can't remember to brush her teeth. So an assisted living is going to help with that. So each facet of dependence is costing an extra amount of money. So now we're up to $6,000 a month for an assisted living. That doesn't include skilled living. So when skilled living occurs, okay, then that's about $10,000 to $12,000 a month. How much does in-home care cost? If you're in independent living, you have your own house, well then you have to pay for caregivers. In the state of Louisiana, caregiving costs about $20 to $22 an hour. So you start adding that up. It's about $12,000 a month if your mom chooses to stay at home. So where are you going to find those resources?
Well, I think Janine is absolutely correct, and fortunately or unfortunately, that's Louisiana's median price is much lower than most other states. When you get up to the Northeast, you could be talking, double that, and I think the most expensive state is actually Alaska. But you also have to consider not only the financial cost, but also the cost on your family. About 80% of in-home care is by a non-paid caregiver, so a spouse or a child. What happens, with that child's life? They're taking time away from their spouse and their children. And also, frequently, and almost always, it is a female child. It may not even be a daughter, maybe a daughter-in-law who's taking care, and they're putting their career on hold, taking time away from their families for someone who's trying to live at home.
So Janine started on a point about when we have an initial meeting, and I meet with folks of all ages. And during that meeting, I have been saying that if you and your husband live to age 65, one of you has 90% chance you're going to live to 90. And so the biggest risk in retirement planning, which we are doing, is longevity. Will I outlive my assets? Okay, so retirement is one number, right? Well, what I've also learned is you can't have two accounts. You can't have one account do two things. And somebody will say, well, I'll use my 401k for my long-term care planning. Well, that's fine, but how about your wife that you left to use your 401k for her retirement planning, and now you need long-term care planning, right? So when we do the planning, we're asking that question. We want to deal with that concern of not outliving your assets, right? So if longevity is the big problem, what's happening during that long time? And that's what's happening is folks are needing long-term care to pay for their final days, and it's really affecting their retirement planning. So that's that couple. And what Eric mentioned is, if you have daughter-in-law or daughter or son have to quit their job to go and take care of a family member, what do you think that does to their 401k plan? Okay, that is the consequence, and it's a domino effect, if you will, in that family. And so yesterday I had that conversation with a lady on the phone. We were discussing, and we were talking about retirement plan. I said, I'm doing a lot of long-term care planning now. Have you had an experience? And she said, yes. I just had to move in my mother-in-law to our house who has early dementia. And then the next question I'm always thinking is, does she have a long-term care policy? Because that's key. If they have a long-term care policy, then that long-term care policy is going to pay for standby assistance. And then I know the next thing that's coming. I'm having trouble getting the benefit. And so what I encourage folks to do, you have to have the policy in hand. And we call the company that you bought the policy with, and we write down the person, take copious notes throughout the process of taking care of a loved one. You have to get a caregiver notebook, and for every issue, take copious notes. Who did I talk to at the company? What is your ID number? What is your phone number? What is your direct line? And when you get an answer about a payment or a non-payment or whatever the decision is, you write that name down, write that decision down, because you're going to be calling again. The next time I talk to Ms. Sullivan, her ID number is this. And it will help with the process, but they're not going to make it easy, guys, and it's an unfortunate thing to get yourself paid. My mother, we had a policy, and I was ready. I was prepared, and we did have a policy that paid very well, no problems. And so it does happen, but it seems like about 8 times out of 10 that I hear that people are having trouble getting their long-term care policies paid. You have to work it almost like a job and be very tenacious and make sure that you're reading the policy and understanding it. I told the story yesterday. I sold that policy to my mother 20 years back. I had no idea what I sold. I'm the son. I'm the advisor. I can promise you, I can almost give you verbatim what that contract says today, because we read it many, many times, and we made sure that we were getting all the value out of that contract. And oftentimes what happens is the parent bought it 20 years ago, the advisor's gone, and here comes Janine, the caring daughter. She says, oh, great, we have a policy. She didn't buy that policy. She didn't read that policy. She has no clue what that policy says. She's got to read that policy and read it quite a number of times. So I encourage that when you get a hold of the policy, hold it tight. There's many series of insurance that these companies go through. I was working with a client. They were getting advice on a policy that wasn't even the right series of contract for the policy. So they're making statements on something that they're holding a contract on this side of the phone, and the company's looking at the wrong contract. So that happens often too. So you really have to be diligent with these companies and to make sure that the money that your parents paid in, that they get paid for their benefits.
So the biggest point in this whole panel discussion is preparing and being proactive. So when do we do this? How many of you have thought about dying in this room? Can you raise your hands? Okay, because none of us are going to get out of dying. And we can actually choose how we can die, right? Do we want to go into an assisted living? We need to let our children know, our heirs know, these are my wishes. There's a beautiful packet called 5 Wishes. You can get it online, and it can actually, you can turn around and say, this is where I want to be buried, this is how I want to go. But you also have to be realistic. Do I have enough money to sustain myself if I choose to live at home? I know I want to live at home. I do not want to go to an assisted living. Is that real if I decline drastically where my child cannot take care of me at home with 24/7 care? Are we going to deplete everything that I've worked so hard to keep and save for her? And so when you start sitting down with someone like Eric and saying, okay, this is what our wishes are, you need to do it with your family, you need to do it with your children, because I guarantee you, if you have more than one child, they're not going to agree. I will tell you that. I'm one of 6. Some reason in Lafayette we have big families. Okay, and I can tell you that my siblings do not agree on the same page on how my mother is going to live out her life. And we were thankful enough that my mother chose. And so she is in an aging in place community. And it has independent living, it has assisted living, and it has the skilled nursing facility. So she said, and she made that choice herself. Who, thank goodness, none of us had to make that for her. When I try to talk to my daughter, who is only 21 years old, I want to talk to you about my dad. Mom, you're not going to die. Yes, I am. I might die tomorrow. And I want you to know what my wishes are. I might get into an accident. I might have dementia. And as soon as I can't recognize you, this is when you need to go to my attorney and tell him, we need to get the POA. We need to get involved. She needs to become my advocate. How many of you have become your loved ones' advocates in this room? How many of you? And how hard has that been? Because you're now in the big guilt question. I feel guilty on putting my mother in a nursing facility. She didn't want to go there. But we never had that discussion. All she kept saying is, I do not want to go into that nursing home. And there's nothing wrong with nursing homes. Don't get me wrong, but the whole fable of nursing homes is I don't want to go there. Well, but mom couldn't afford 24/7 care. I can't afford to stay home and take care of her. So now I am riddled with guilt because I have no other choice. How many of you are in that position today? How does that feel?
That's awful.
Yeah, but what are your other choices? There are not many. So how do we find those choices? How do we sit down with someone who is going to advise us in the right direction?
Jeannie, can I also interject? How do you work the family dynamic? How do you work the family dynamic? Because I'm not from Lafayette, I'm from New York, and I'm one of 5. And when my mom got diagnosed, there were 5 different decisions and 5 different opinions, and each one of the 5 sisters was the most brilliant one. So how do you work that? And of course they were. And by the way, mom did not leave any instructions on. All she knew was she wanted to stay at home. But then she had a stroke and was diagnosed with vascular dementia. So now what do you do?
I was going to say something, but that's an issue really for an attorney, because what I encourage our clients to do is pick that person, and that is the healthcare power of attorney. And it's up front. You have to have the conversation. I picked Janine to make the decision, so you can be mad at me now. And so after the fact, what happens, Eric?
We have, and I think that's, again, exactly right. We always encourage our clients to execute a power of attorney as well as a healthcare power of attorney who appoints the person who they would trust, who is the most responsible to make those decisions for them. My father-in-law, hopefully he's not in this room, couldn't bear to hurt one of his daughters. He's got 3 daughters, couldn't bear to hurt one of his daughter's feelings, so he lists all 3. And he fell off a ladder, and then the 3 were fighting amongst each other. So he's learned his lesson, and he's carved it down to 1.
When I meet with families, it is so difficult when you do have so many people that think they know what's best for mom. Okay, and especially when you have the mom and dad still living, and dad wants to take care of mom, and the daughters are getting involved and saying, oh, no, it's too much for dad. So we have to stay, to kind of take a step back and say, wait a minute. What is in the best interest of this person? How do we maintain their dignity? Which is not what's happening a lot of times. I have so many, clients that will turn around to me and say, mom used to love to cook. I just put her over here while I'm cooking. This is her husband talking. I said, time out. Why isn't she cooking with you? Why aren't we doing this together? Well, she doesn't know how to cook. I said, it's not about knowing how to cook. This is what she used to love to do, and you are stripping her of her dignity. You're disrespecting her, so you have to make sure that you don't forget that this person is still a human being. They are still that loving person that is there. And you might not have glimpses occasionally, but when you can turn around and say, what did they used to love to do? They used to love to cook. Well, let's do the hand under hand technique and cook together. Even if she puts sugar in the tomato sauce and it tastes terrible, who cares? It's not about the ending factor. It's about doing it together and keeping this person alive and living. And so when you have the dichotomy of families that are saying, this is what's best for mom, get a mediator. Get someone in there that's going to take away the personal responsibilities and emotions that are involved. Nobody knows what's best for that person, but that person themselves, right?
I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. Janine asked a question a little while ago about how do we pay for nursing home care, and I don't think I really got around to addressing that specifically. One of the, I guess, biggest myths of long-term care is that's going to be covered by Medicare, and that's just not the case. Medicare will not cover long-term care. If you're coming out of a hospital for the first 20 days, it will cover 100%. For the next 80 days, it will cover roughly 20%. But after that, Medicare is gone. So then you've got a few other options. You could self-pay, which roughly, $6,000, $7,000 a month, and that could go into your savings pretty quickly. If you were smart enough and foresighted enough to purchase long-term care insurance, that's a great option. After that, you're probably down to Medicaid. Medicaid is what we consider the payer of last resort. However, to qualify for Medicaid, you're only allowed to have what's called a limited amount of countable resources. What they mean by countable resources is not assets, because two totally different things. And countable resources has to be below $2,000. And if you've got $2,500 in your savings account, you just qualify. However, you can have non-countable resources. Your home is a non-countable resource, so Medicaid won't look at that. An automobile is a non-countable resource. You can also structure your assets in a way where you convert non-countable or countable resources into non-countable resources. And this is one of the important things of planning early, because when you plan early, it's much easier to do that. We can use things that like special needs trusts. You can have an unlimited amount of resources in a special needs trust, and it can be used to benefit, and it won't be a countable resource. We can use income-only trust to help shift countable resources out of a patient's name. Again, those won't be counted. So again, you want to plan early, because the earlier you plan, more options you have available.
I'd like to speak to that guilt that Janine talked about, because I went through that. It was very stressful, and I had a friend of mine who was going through it with her father, and I talked to her about it, and she said, Taylor, just the idea that you're thinking about it should void the guilt, guys. Just the fact that you're here should void the guilt. You know that the guilt is because you love your loved one, and that's enough. And you're going to do the best you can. And just the fact that you're here to find out these resources that can be available for you to help out with your loved ones, that voids the guilt. And I just think that's so important as we go through this, because people out there that have kids are fortunate enough to have it, and it's the folks that don't have kids that and that's what we're seeing in our societies. There's so much spread. People are so spread out that it is an issue.
So I want everybody to stand up. Stand up. I want you to take a look around. And I want you to thank each one of you for being a caregiver, to being part of this crusade to end Alzheimer's, to be able to just turn around and love the person that is next to you and say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Keep them on their feet.
Okay, so,
While we have you standing, just look at the stage and wave to Harlan. so obedient. It's a beautiful crowd. Sorry. Continue, you guys.
Are there any questions for any of us?
Go, guys.
Is anybody yes? Oh, wait. Okay.
Wait for the mic.
Hello, hello.
Hello?
All right, wait for the microphone. Wait for the mic. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, my name's Carolyn, and I work for A Place for Mom, and so I'm the representative for the state of Louisiana here. She had said about when you have many siblings, and there's a lot of people want to make the decisions. I work with families every day on making the decisions of being placed or staying at home, and when we work with more than one sibling, what we have to ask is, what is your motive, number one? And then we have a lot of siblings that want to make the decision of where mom's going, what is she doing, or is she staying home, how many hours of home care? And the thing is the person making the decision, we have to ask them is, how much time do you really have to make that decision? Because a lot of them will say, well, I have kids, or I have a job, or I'll come over and bring mom's food. And then when something happens, the car breaks, or they have to go to work on the weekends, mom's at home, right? Or contributing to them living in an assisted living. Well, I'm gonna contribute $500 a month, so we're gonna put mom here. Well, what happens when they go on vacation and decide, well, this month I can't put that $500 in. So we really got to really ask these 5 siblings and the sisters who all have a say-so, really where are you going to contribute and how long can you do it, the longevity of that. And when we get into power of attorneys that were placed at a certain time in life, that can change because your lifestyle can change and you may not be able to be the person to make those health decisions anymore or those financial decisions for your loved ones. So those things kind of change daily too. So we work with them on making some of those decisions.
We have issues similar to that come across our desk from time to time. We're just speaking about this outside. You know, a child of an elderly person will come in and will tell us that, well, mom's been diagnosed with in the early stages of Alzheimer's or dementia. So we need to transfer all mom's assets into my name so that she can qualify for long-term care. And we have to make a decision, you know, for us, who's the client? Well, mom's the client. We need to talk to mom and see what mom really wants to do. So, but yes, I would agree.
And so full disclosure with my family, there was 5 of us, but 3 of us became our primary caregivers. And we were, it's one thing when there's an elderly person involved. There's another thing when there's a diagnosis of dementia, because that brings the caregiving to a whole other level. And for us, it was, for as much as I've been with the foundation for 13 years, it was an eye-opener, because there is a lot. And to Janine's point, you all should feel really proud of everything you do, because it takes everything you have and everything you are to care for your loved one.
I have a question about the trust.
There's a
You
question.
said that they had a special needs trust and an income trust?
Yeah, there are several different types. Well, there are probably hundreds of different types of trusts. A special needs trust is a non-countable resource for Medicaid. They don't look at that as a countable resource. Within the realm of special needs trusts, there are also multiple types. There's what we call a self-settled trust, which is used or settled or funded with the beneficiary's own assets. And then there's a third-party special needs trust, which is settled with someone else's assets. So, for instance, if you had a special needs child and you wanted that child to qualify for benefits, you would put your assets into a third-party trust. A self-settled trust, there was, just this past year, there was some legislation passed, which was called the Special Needs Trust Fairness Act, which allowed the the actual beneficiary to create the trust. Prior to that, it had to be a guardian, a parent, a grandparent, or a court. But now, the beneficiary himself or herself can create that trust. The drawback there, however, is it can only be funded with the beneficiary's assets if the beneficiary is 65 or younger. Again, that's another reason to plan it earlier, or plan early. An income-only trust is a totally different type of animal. It's not a special needs trust. But the way that works, and I hope I'm not talking over anyone's heads, frequently, like I just mentioned, when the child comes in and says, well, we need to shift everything into my name so the mom can qualify for long-term care benefits. Well, what happens if we do that? Great, mom can qualify after the 5-year look back. There's a 60-month look back, during which period any assets that were transferred out of mom's name for less than fair market value were going to be deemed to still be owned by mom. So mom won't qualify for those benefits. So what happens in that 60-month period if something happens to that child? What happens if that child gets sued? What happens if that child gets divorced? What happens if that child dies and leaves those assets to his wife or his children? Then mom or dad may need the money, but it won't be there anymore. What we can do is we can transfer those assets into an income-only trust or a qualified income-only trust, where mom or dad is still the income beneficiary for his lifetime or her lifetime, but the children become the principal beneficiaries. That way, mom or dad can still receive the income off of all those assets during the interim, and they don't have to worry about those assets floating away with the child's ex-wife or in a lawsuit or under the child's will. That clarify it all?
Totally. Thank you. I
Okay.
really appreciate it.
Excuse me, and I realize that we're talking about parents, and I took care of both of my parents when it came to the end of their lives, but I'm the only single child of 8 children behind me, and so I was wondering if the preparations for us and myself, I'm not married, I don't have any children, what kind of specific preparations should I be looking at now? And as of Friday, I'm going to be 69.
So you're talking about like a long-term care policy for yourself?
For
or-
myself, yes.
I think you would have to take a look at your assets and, who is going to benefit from your assets and where do you want to be? What is your last wishes? Where do you want to have one of your siblings take care of you and voice that to your siblings since you are single? As divorce is so prevalent now, there aren't those benefits. I kind of laugh with my friends and say, let's get a community home and let's live together. And no, seriously, because how are we going to afford? Not everybody can afford $6,000 a month to live in an assisted living. But if I get a couple of friends and move into a house together and we share the expenses and we have a caregiver that comes in, we're defraying the costs amongst maybe 4 or 5 friends. So I think, is that possible with your siblings? Are you, can you do that with your siblings? Move in with them. And then I know that I do believe that the VA and certain programs allow for siblings to be paid for their caregivers. So you can, one of your caregivers could be paid by a program to take care of you in your old age. Did that answer?
Yeah. Thank you.
I just wanted to offer this questions about how siblings make decisions when they disagree around their parents' care keeps coming up. And I wanted to offer as a resource, there's a really wonderful book called They're Your Parents Too, how siblings can survive their parents' aging without driving each other crazy. So that book is written by Francine Rousseau, and it offers a lot of different advice and guidance on navigating that process that a lot of folks have found really helpful.
Excellent, thank you. And I think that's what's important about these conferences, is what are the resources? When you get the diagnosis of your loved one, then what happens? The doctor turns around and and says, okay, your wife has been diagnosed with MCI or dementia, see ya. Well, then what happens after that? Because no one prepares us for the journey. They don't turn around and say, you know, what to expect, or where do we go? How do we make sure we get the POA? Because how do you get a POA, which I think is really difficult to do when someone is in their early stages of dementia? So, Eric, can you shed on that?
In the early stage, a diagnosis does not render someone incapable of executing a document. And I was about to just chime up a second ago. In order to execute a will in Louisiana, you've got to have, you don't have to understand everything that the will says. You've got to have a general understanding that you're disposing of your assets in the manner in which you're disposing of your assets. So just the diagnosis does not take away that the legal ability to execute a document like that. So yeah, you can still move forward with a power of attorney, a healthcare power of attorney, a living will, a last will and testament, a trust. But again, as we said all along, the earlier you start in the process, the easier it is, the less likely anything would be challenged. And again, just the easier it is.
We did our POA when Mom had an early diagnosis, so I agree. I mean, it can be done, so that, but do it. You know, when that happens, that's we're saying do it before, but let's give you a sense of urgency. When you get that diagnosis, this needs to happen very quick. And I want to thank the lady that's got up and spoke about her service. Ma'am,
Place for Mom, Place for Mom.
yeah, that's an incredible, guys, a resource out there. Because one of the mistakes, and one of the things she said was, you do a POA and things change. So these plans need to be reviewed. They need to be communicated. The holidays are coming up, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Take a little time, put it aside, and let's have this discussion of what the plan was. Because, like she said, if you've made a power of attorney before your child had 3 kids, well, her life changed. And so that needs to change, and you need to make these changes accordingly. And one of the mistakes I was about to make was someone said, you ought to be talking to hospice for my mom. And I was so adamantly opposed to it because I felt like we were giving up on her when hospice was mentioned, right? And my sister came in and said, well, I don't care what you think, we're going to meet with them. And if you want to come to the meeting, great. If you don't, that's okay too. Well, they came in, it was wonderful. They ministered to us. My mom fit under the palliative care for hospice. And palliative care is not 10 days before death. For my mom, was 11 months of hospice palliative care. And it was the most beautiful thing. She got better. We got better. We got healthy. We were able to have my mother die. It's just an incredible place. We were all in a better place. And it's these decisions that we're trying to make in a very emotional state that had I, put my feet in the ground as the POA, we would have not met with hospice. And so now I'm carrying that flag that why not have the meeting? They'll tell you if you don't qualify, but at least you know when are you going to qualify. And so I encourage hospice, the sooner the better. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing, and that was my experience with the end with Mom.
We have time for one more question.
Hello, I'm the caregiver for 2 92-year-old parents, and I did have to give up my career. I was wondering if I do have POAs, but I was wondering if I could get the cards of each of you. We do need financial assistance. I was also wondering if we can have a copy of this video, And on a personal note, I do need a long-term care policy. My friends have a 3 and a 6-year policy respectively. And I'm wondering what that means. Do you only have 3 years or 6 years of care?
So that's what you have 3 years of benefits or 6 years of benefits. You may live longer than the 3 years or 6 years. The reason they pick those years is that's the average long-term care need, between 3 and 6 years. Some old policies have lifetime benefits, and so the industry has changed dramatically over the years. I know, when people buy long-term care, they don't cancel it, they keep it. And so they're using it. And I think the companies didn't plan for that. They planned that some policies would go away. And so, there's a lot of explanation of what's going on in the industry, but, most policies aren't going to pay for everything. So you need to be looking at Social Security, other assets, like I mentioned, retirement plans, to set some aside that we're not going to use that for our retirement spending, we're going to use it for our long-term care. And so, absolutely, people are buying the limited benefits for a cost savings up front. So that's basically.
That's not what your mother had.
No, that's not what my mother had.
Okay.
But what my mother had is hardly available anymore, and that's the problem. And so that makes the planning even more important, that you have to get your assets aligned with the supplemental long-term care policy to make sure all your bases are covered.
So I wanted to thank Eric Taylor and Janine. Give them a round of applause. So in the back of the room, you'll see that both Taylor and Janine have tables, so please visit them. Eric, are you sticking around?
I'll stick around.
Eric will stick around for a little bit. We are going to take out, you can cut it.